mission statement. We were going to revisit this, right, Tom?
Yeah, Mr. Jacobs had prepared this for us back last February, and then COVID hit. And all of our attention for the last 18, or well, it's a full year now, I'm sorry. A full year has been focused on COVID and all, so I just had Mary Ann resubmit the mission statement examples that were voted on by the board, and if Tom wants to take a quick 5 minutes to just summarize the color coding and some of that, it would be great.
Oh, thank you. Be happy to do it.
You want to switch back?
No, I can see it from here, but
Okay.
there's, I think on my page 12, there is we should start with the existing mission statement, which is color coded. Yep, that one. So, you know, I think we're starting with the existing one just because we obviously need to measure it against whatever we're proposing, measuring it against what we already have. The idea of highlighting who, what, how, why is fairly self-explanatory, I think. I mean, in general, mission statements, as I've understood them, are really answering the question, why? Why do you exist? But from the why, it goes into these other questions, who, what, and how. Now, you can see in, I think the thing to highlight here is in the existing one, it's actually a relatively balanced mix of 4 of these colors. And that is a key starting point, because as we'll see in our options, there is a bit of a departure. Now, I'm pointing this out because when you actually, just a quick thing about the why. If mission statements really are about why, you can see there's relatively little reference to it. At the very end, it talks about a diverse and changing world. And I actually think that makes a lot of sense, because the why question in education is you really don't have to explain to anyone why you have a school. Like that's, you know, in companies that's much more difficult, in some organizations, but in the school, that's like one thing we all agree is important. So there's more other colors specifically as to the who, what, and how. And so having said this, if we can go to the next page, and maybe we have to, we can probably reduce the size a little bit so that we can see maybe all of them together. So we had already, in last year at some point before COVID hit, we went through a process where we actually reduced the number of statements a little bit, and we sort of took a straw poll, which you can sort of see who was leaning towards which versions. I would say here, again, the biggest difference is that there is 3 relatively brief statements in the range from 7 to 15 words, and there's 2 longer ones. One falls sort of in the middle at 36, and then there's a longer one at 73, which goes above the 60 that we have now. But I think the length is something that actually is a real discussion point, should be, in my opinion. And what I'm saying now is a little bit of my bias or my opinion, but this goes back to the existing one, where we have a balance of answering these points. I happen to believe that this balance is useful and important, because I think no matter what we do, there will be no student ever who will remember this, and that's fine. I think this mission statement primarily exists to remind board members of what we've signed up for, what we're here to do, how we're supposed to set policy. I think it's also good for administration to see and for all the teachers. And so that's where the shorter statements, where you can see different combinations of color, one is red and blue, one is red and green, to answer to these different points. But in my opinion, they're actually too short. If we agree that schools are a good idea, we already know we agree on this, and then we just go with these short ones, we just go a little further, but to me that doesn't really give a sense of what an elected board actually sort of leans towards. So that's where I think somewhere between the 36-word statement one and the 73, and I'll just say the 73 one was for me, and it could easily be reduced to 60 or below if that's important to somebody. But what you can see in the 36-word statement is that it's a good mix of colors, with the exception of yellow, which is how. I happen to believe that answering or putting some language in that talks to how adds real flavor. That's like the spice in a meal. That actually sort of shows, it tips the hand of a board maybe a little more towards how we see education unfolding. And so specifically what I would recommend, we should also talk about timing of this discussion. You know, we didn't choose that, but now we're a month and a half before an election. I actually think it might be prudent to continue the conversation, to take advantage of the fact that all of us here who have already started the discussion, I think it would be good to continue pushing it. However, I'm not necessarily in favor of voting one in, because we don't quite know who might be on the board starting April or May. And because it's a mission statement, I think that would actually be a good opportunity to let potentially new members weigh in on this also.
Tom, anybody running could weigh in on it. I think it's prudent for this board to finish the work that it started, 2 years. You're talking about the mission statement, and out of the mission statement will come your goals, eventually your strategic plan, which the new board then will have opportunity to craft. The mission statement will stand for a period of time. You don't get a new one or even evaluate a new one every 2 years, every 4 years. So I think by putting it in, it actually gives the current board that legacy, the work that's completed, and allows the next board to move, to pick up, and to start building on the work. I just think, you know, the more we linger, you know, we're going to languish. It's going to die on the vine. And we can't evaluate the work. We cannot function as a board is designed to function. Our job is to set the goals of a district, identify the data that will tell us that those goals are being met. We hire one employee. We can't do that, minus COVID, without getting this done. So the longer we put this off, the longer we're just a lame board.
Well, I don't think anyone's suggesting we put it off unless we're ever, right?
I think we have the discussion now, for sure. I mean, I'm not hearing we don't have a discussion. Is that-
Right, and I would also say, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that that we can't act. The old mission statement is still in place. It's going to be enacted until we do something different. And I happen to believe that the existing mission statement is actually pretty good. I mean, it's not, so, you know, I ran on this too, and I said we have to have conversations about the future of education, and of course we should. But I'm saying I don't quite have the same sense of urgency, but obviously that's up for discussion.
But we can't get our goals. We're 2 years without meaningful goals to use in our evaluation and moving the district forward. And that's really unprecedented. Again, it's a COVID year, but for any organization to just kind of be without this driving force to measure its progress, I just think it's uncomfortable.
We have goals, we're just looking to redo the goals.
Well,
Not that
and
we don't have goals.
we have goals, but I am not convinced that we are moving towards those goals or targeting those goals as we had been. We're not making the same kinds of decisions for those goals because we opened the dialogue looking at the mission with the idea that we were going to revisit the goals.
Well, I mean, so do you have a preference of these? I mean, I guess we probably need to have that discussion. I mean, Laura, do you have a preference?
No, I
Or
think
what's the
we
right way to
should.
proceed then?
I think we should have kind of like a work, the next meeting, maybe 45 or a half hour before the meeting, come and craft it, pick it, do it. You know, we have to eventually do it. And then it could be posted for comment. Say, this is the one we've crafted, we've got all the words, you like it, and then you can leave it posted for comment. If anybody really objects to it, or anybody running objects to it, then we can revisit that, but.
What's your thought, Gina?
I mean, I only have a few meetings left, so I feel kind of.
So you have to add an extra 30 minutes to your meeting.
Right? And no, I don't mind doing it because I think it's
Yeah.
going to be a longer discussion
Yeah.
than
Right.
probably any of us anticipate it to be. But at the same time, like from my perspective, because I'm the only one here who am definitely not coming back, you know, it does seem to me that if somebody's coming new on the board, it would be nice for them to be able to have an opportunity to weigh in.
But if they're running, they can certainly
You can
comment.
certainly weigh in.
So I kind of agree with Laura, to like set the tone so that the rest, like they can, in essence, what you're saying is like hit the ground running, right? Like some of the hard work's been done. Now let's go on to
Well, we don't- I don't know, I think the next part's gonna be harder than this part, but that's.
For the
what-
goals?
I think, yeah. I think in the.
Sure,
in the
but then-
strategic plan behind the
but-
goals is
But to
really the
Laura's
crux of the
point,
matter,
then
right?
you're
That's
not
what we're
pushed
getting.
back another week, month.
No, I
months.
don't have any anticipation
Right,
of Bill, anything next meeting, maybe we come in early?
Yeah. If it's not
Now,
posted that, I mean, I think
is
we're
that
I
close.
think we
Open
gotta
or
come in
closed?
prepared and ready to go, hit the-
Yeah.
you know.
Be open.
It's open session?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be open and
Right.
that we could get,
So you consider that like a special meeting? Or
You just
no,
go
you just
there.
bake it into
Move
the,
agenda, we'll work, Mary and I will work on that, it's not a
Okay.
problem.
and I think we come with, you know, I think now that we're revisited, I think the last year is certainly, this ever-changing world, right? It is, you know, if ever we knew that was a true statement, it is today more than before, right?
And I think that's a great idea. I'm totally up for meeting, early and so forth. We have to find a place to discuss it, right? That's the
Right.
most important thing. What I was sort of hoping to maybe gauge a little bit is whether anybody feels strongly about this balance argument. Because I don't know how the discussion's going to unfold, but I will tell you, for me, to take the existing mission statement and strip it so bare that it skips a couple of the things that it has now does not make sense. And so I'm just, I'm telling you now sort of where I'm coming from. Whether you already have comments about that or not might give us a little bit of a sense of, is this a 30-minute discussion? Or is this a couple of 30 minutes discussions, which if they're really good ones and engaged and even some community members show up to talk about it and teachers, I'd be thrilled.
right. I'm not married to my, the one I submitted or the one that has my name next to it. In fact, like now that it's been almost a year, right? Like you kind of think, okay. But my thought process, and I'm not sure where this comes from, but is that yes, every member of the organization, from the paraprofessionals to the administration and everyone in between can say it, right? And so when you're getting up to there's a reason why our phone numbers are we're used to be 7 digits and now are 10. It's because it's a memory thing, right? So if we want everyone in the organization to be able to internalize this and be able to, this is like such a teacher thing to say, but like be quizzed on it, for lack of a better analogy. I don't think the administration is going to go down the hall and stop teachers. What is it? Tell me now, right? But they should be able to
You know what though, Mona? But they really can. Like, what have you done this week that bears out our mission statement? How are you living our mission statement? What have you done? What have you implemented? How are you being true to the mission statement? right? Like
So
that.
so are you saying it's more than just like, I'm saying they should be able to regurgitate it or have internalized it, and you're saying it's more than
as
that?
a board, do you want people just to be able to regurgitate it, or do you want people to live it?
Have you ever recited a mission statement?
Yeah, I can tell you mine. District 100, oh Jesus, now I'm on the spot.
Now she's
I'm
on the
like,
spot.
will inspire a passion for learning in every child. Sorry.
Because it's short.
Because it's short, that's what I'm
Because it's
saying.
short.
But I think it's important to split hairs a little bit. We had some discussion, we had the IASB person, and there's vision statements, which are
Right.
future and
Right.
aspirational. So District 100, that's a vision statement.
That is a
right?
vision statement.
Right? This is a mission statement. This is
Okay.
how you operationalize
Right.
it. Well,
Okay.
I'm sorry. This is how you live it, and then the goals are how you operationalize it. And I'm sure there's professionals who can say that a lot better than I just did. But I think it's a great idea to have a focused discussion on this, absolutely. I would like to start better than where we left off a year ago, though. Like, instead of having all 5 options, can we somehow get some
Yeah.
guide rails here that we can,
Yeah.
when we meet next time, we know we want to go with all
Start
the
with one,
colors.
and then we could start, I mean, I love your conversation about the balance, having a little more than one line.
Yes, I definitely
Yes.
appreciate the color coding and all of that.
So
It'd
I
just be
think maybe we
interesting to
start with
know.
one that's fuller,
Yeah.
because you can always, what I've learned as a data person, never collapse resolution in the beginning. So you start with your more fuller mission statement, and you have lots of room to cull.
Sure.
Agreed.
It would just be interesting to know. I mean, I've been in education 27 years. I've had lots of mission statements. I couldn't tell you any of them anywhere I worked except the district, that it was a shorter one. And we lived it and we knew it, and it was on everything. That was what we stood for.
So in the
That is why-
formats.
That is why we were there. That every day we woke up in the morning because we were bearing out this mission. Like, this is why we were there.
So we
And it was
take
really
the-
powerful.
Yeah, so we take the fuller one, and then we say,
So.
these words aren't adding anything, and you can trim.
That would be starting with 73 then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
Well, if you don't mind, why don't Tom and I work on this over the next
So,
2 weeks,
yeah.
and we'll come with 2
Sure.
or 3. We'll kind of figure that out, and we'll kind of start there and move.
Yeah, right.
And we'll kind of have a plan of where we want to go and kind of
Start
direct us
the
through it.
March.
If you don't mind, Tom, we can work on that outside of this over the next 2 weeks. And
Sounds great.
And
March
then
meeting
you
will
have your
start at
colors, so
6:30.
that way it does show the balance. And anything fuller can be called, as opposed to having to find out what's missing and put it back in.
No, I totally agree. And actually, and Gina, your point is that's, the best work that I've seen in this thing is that you quite literally, you say the same thing, it's longer or shorter for different purposes. And so sometimes, there's maybe a time where you have the medium one or whatever, the longer one, but then whether it's a vision or a mantra or, those are the times when you actually know you've really discussed it through, because you can do that relatively easily and say, out of however many words, those are the 5 that are the most important that we want people to remind. So that, I think that would be great if we end up there.
And I think one of those words should be an ever-changing world. I think that's really important for that one, because I see that in almost every single one of them, and I think that one's really important to have in there.
Well, yeah, right, this past year.
Yeah.
Well, it's in our old one, and it's in a couple and 3 of the new ones, right? So it's definitely in. We just lived it. We are living it right now. Hector just gave a, 15-minute speech on it, the changing world.
Lily and Michael, we would expect you to be involved in this discussion as student advisors,
Yeah.
because as students that are graduating in 2 months or 3 months, right?
Yeah, and I also think, I think that 30 to 40 range is pretty good, because you don't want to make it too long, but it's also, I agree with the vision statement versus the mission statement too, because I think having it be a mission statement as in, we don't have to memorize that, but it's like a culminating way of saying what our mission is versus a vision statement where you could live by that. So yeah, I agree with that too.
I'm at a current place where it's innovate, collaborate, elevate. That's the vision statement. That's like the 3 words, right? And there's a longer mission statement about transparency and accountability and all of those other government things. So I think there's Yeah, start big and go, and then shrink it down. That seems like a good path.
Well, and when we look at the words, I mean, you don't want to, constrain yourself by saying only 40 words.
Yeah.
You start to look at it and say, is this redundant? Is there any redundancy? You don't need to say anything twice. And you'll find out that there are sometimes sentences or phrases that are repeated, and then you can take those out.
Yeah.
It's like reducing fractions.
Yeah, like in the current mission statement, I didn't like how it said partnership twice within like two
Right.
sentences. It was a little repetitive.
So that's a perfect, thing to call, We only need to say it once, maybe even more succinctly,
Yeah.
and that's how you start to trim it.
Mhm.
Well, we're moving. That's
Good.
the main thing, right? Like we're
Yes.
keeping, now we've
Yes.
put it back on the table, right? We're out of trauma mode. Put it back on the table. We're moving forward. Like
Yes.
that's the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say, slide 18, who doesn't love a good Jim Collins quote? Like I was like, oh, I love him. So-
6:30 March meeting? Right?
Yeah,
That's fine.
And so just,
Probably.
I mean,
maybe even
At the end of the-
6:15.
at the end of that time, if
6:15
it's
is
not
good.
done, it just moves it to the next meeting and it will continue, but at least you're not
Yeah,
doing, just, you're
Correct.
getting some committee work in before the actual
Correct.
business of the board.
We would be
So
at that
let's do
meeting
six-
too, right? Me and
Correct.
Lauren?
Please,
Okay.
yes.
So 6:15. All right, we were gonna discuss the student advisors.
So I thought we were doing
This
that at
is
the
a-
last meeting.
Yeah, this is just a
It's a placeholder.
placeholder, because it was advised, and then more discussion would occur as we got near the application process.
Okay. All
We
right.
wanted to put it on there as a placeholder that it was asked for a future
Yeah.
discussion.